Welcome back, everyone. It's just another day in the life as a military wife. And this last weekend, I was doing a service project with some other military spouses, and we started talking about just military life in general and transitions and how we handle work-life balance. And I've got some interesting things I want to share with you in regards to the conversation we had. So I am your host, Sam Wolf, and you are listening to Life of a Military Wife. Okay, so I've done this a couple times before, and I'm going to do it again. This topic got me as I was, prepping everything and going through old textbooks and whatnot. Thinking about, I don't know why, but that first couple minutes from Hunt for the Red October, when the mom is trying to hurry and get the when Ryan, the CIA analyst, is trying to get out the door from England into a plane, and his wife is trying to help him get out the door, and she's saying to the nanny or whoever's going to watch their daughter, no more than the usual nonsense. 2 glasses of water and like 2 bedtime stories and 2 glasses of water. Like, I don't know why. For some reason, that made me think of this. And it's partly because one of the things we were talking about is the interaction between work, family, and community. And I've talked about boundaries and work-life balance before. This time, we're going to talk about how they interact. So there are jobs out there. The military is not one of those where you go to work, you come home, you leave work at work, and when you're home, you're home. Military life is not that. You pretty much on call 24/7. You work from home. You work, yeah. I can't count how many times my husband's come home and he's like, "I'm not really home." And I'm like, "Okay, then hi, figment of my imagination." But that's just not uncommon with military life. And um, quite frequently, like in the middle of dinner, phone calls from service members who need help with XYZ thing, or, this project didn't get done. Someone has to come back and finish it, or something's gone wrong. Please tell me what I need to do to fix it. That those things are really, really common in military life. And the higher your spouse gets in military ranks, it seems like the more that stuff happens on family time. The perk is there's also a lot of hurry up and wait in military life. So in those moments where there is hurry up and wait, where you're told, "Oh, be at this place at this time. We're gonna." I saw the best meme a while ago. It was a whole bunch of soldiers like just sleeping on the floor and in office chairs and on top of desks and stuff. And it said, "Be here at 0300, they said. "We'll be drawing our weapons right away and going straight out into the field," they said. 5 hours later, and they're all asleep on the floor waiting to be able to draw their weapons. And that hurry up and wait is a real thing in the military. It just happens. And so we've learned to be flexible. When hurry up and wait happens, there are sometimes things my husband can do during that hurry up and wait time to help me out. Um, so sometimes he can call and set up doctor's appointments for the kids, or he can pay bills online, or very frequently he'll start researching something that we need as a family. So like if there's been times I've needed a new laptop, or he actually found my microphone that I use to record this podcast. And that during the hurry up and wait time is when he does a lot of his online shopping. So there is some overlap between work life and family life, especially in military. More so if you've got a situation where you have a family business, then work and family life completely overlap. So the level of what the overlap is really largely dependent upon your work environment and situation. But one thing that most all of those have in common is the transition from work to family. Um, And we learned really early on in the military. The first place we were stationed, first place we lived when we were first stationed, there was not much of a commute. According to the research I was seeing in one of my textbooks, especially, it appears that men don't seem to mind long commutes as much as women do. And I know there's going to be exceptions to all of those rules, but overall, that was the general trend they found. And with that, we saw that. Our first installation, we lived close, and then we moved further away, and we lived on the installation. And when we lived close, we really had to work out how he could mentally transition to being home, because quite frequently he would get home and he wasn't ready to deal with family stuff. His brain was still, getting back into family mode. And then we moved further away, and I realized my husband would get home from his almost half-hour commute, and he was ready, almost walking in the door to deal with family stuff, because he had been able to transition in the car, mentally transition. And then we've lived on an installation where there's been basically no commute, and we've had to come up with a system where kind of let him have 30 minutes to just deal with whatever in his head, up in our room, and just kind of change in whatever he needs to do. And then I usually sick the kids on him, because half the time he falls asleep changing out of his uniform. Okay, not half the time, but it happens. It happens quite frequently. But so I was like I said, I was talking with other military spouses at this situation over the weekend, and we were talking about this, mentally transitioning and how that works, and how that works for our different spouses. And it was really interesting. It really is something that is universally needed. However, the approach is different for each family. One family said that the husband tended to just sit in the car. He would get home and he'd sit in the car, and it's almost typically, like, universally 30 minutes. He'd sit in the car for 30 minutes and just chill in the car for 30 minutes. And then when he was ready, he would come in the house, but once he walked in the door, it was Mr. Mom time. It was daddy play time. And that worked for them. That worked for their family. And so that's how they worked it. Other people talked about different ways that they worked on making those transitions. And um, so, yeah, whether it's sitting out in the car or whatnot, the other issue that's been happening lately is because with COVID, more and more people are working from home. And when you work from home, the most ideal option for working from home, based on the research I was looking at, based on what I know with work-life balance, is if you have a dedicated workspace that is completely separate, ideally with a separate entrance, external entrance from your home environment. And here's why. That actually helps you mentally separate from home to work. And so if you could, like, walk out your front door, heck, even if you want to walk out for your front door, run an errand, come home, walk in your gate, and go into, like, a man shed. Well, that's what I call it. But when a member of my husband's family works from home, and he's got a home office in a very nice air-conditioned shed in his backyard. And I say shed, but it's basically like this one-room building. And he's got this whole setup, like, with all of his computers and all of his office equipment. He's even got, like, a microwave and a refrigerator and a couch and the whole shebang. That way he doesn't have to leave his home office during his work hours. And that's advantageous for him in his being effective in his homework environment, because he's able to mentally separate with that kind of a setup. You're able to mentally separate being home and being at work better. And like I said, if you've got something like that and you're able to even, like, go drive somewhere, get gas, drive back or whatever, it makes it even more effective. The issue that was commonly run into during COVID or in shutdown, lockdown, working from home, telecommuting as it's become more and more common is a lot of people don't have these designated, segregated office spaces. So having that mental separation between work time and home time so that you're not carrying over family stresses into work time and work stresses over into family time, but you're able to genuinely enjoy that time together is become more and more of an issue. And so if you are in one of those situations, try to find that way to make a mental transition, to give yourself that downtime, that mental separation, whether it's go out and sit in your car for 30 minutes. I know that sounds ridiculous because you're not going to have a commute, but if that's what you need to mentally detach, then you do it. Go for it. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't have that issue, but you might. And so that's something I would strongly recommend. And honestly, it's one of those things where as I was researching and going through all of this, it was interesting with the type of overlap they were finding. Some of these research studies were a little bit older, but then they were also talking about ways that employers and work environments can be more supportive to their employees so that they're able to balance the work and family situations and stresses more effectively. And some of that was what the research refers to as boundary spanning resources. So, employers will sometimes provide flexible work schedules to help accommodate if there's two individuals, like both parents are working. Or another thing is dependent care benefits. There are employers who will have childcare on their premise or they'll help pay for childcare. The military does do this. CDCs are available. They're usually really, really, really backed up. There's a lot more demand than there is supply, especially with post COVID. It feels like the wait lists are forever. Military hospitals are great in this aspect, or at least the ones I'm familiar with. They sometimes will have hourly care. So, for example, if the soldier um, if like the spouse has an appointment they can't take a kid to and the soldier can't get off and they can't find anyone to watch their kid, they can take their child to this hourly care. Or if the soldier is deployed, there's assistance there. I know that there was a elementary school district or basically a school district that I was associated with our family that found that they were struggling to keep and find quality individuals and employees because childcare was an issue. And so they decided to start providing their own childcare for their employees as a way to um, find, keep, and quality employees. And so those are some of the ways that those boundary spanning resources can help with family stresses that will sometimes arise, specifically in the case of child care. Um, it just popped into my head, another instance that I ran into where, um, oh, well, go ahead. Let's go back for 5 seconds. So, um, with workplace, the another thing employers will sometimes do is, and this has become more of a thing, FMLA, that is a the Family Medical Leave Act, I believe is what it's. Yeah, now I'm messing up my acronyms, I'm sure. But anyway, that is in the civilian sector and it allows for leave due to family medical needs or stuff like that. Anyway, we've had individuals who have needed to use it in the past, and that has helped. Another situation for military is that there is a special type of leave if there's family and medical emergency. There's emergency leave. So there are employers have started to come up with these flexible ways of helping to meet emergencies that individuals and families will have. But kind of going back to that whole transition thing, I thought of something else that I wanted to share. And it was the fact that I had a situation in where I was working in an elementary school that my kids went to, and we lived in that neighborhood. And so kids in the neighborhood just started coming out of the woodworks and wanting to tell me things and talk to me. And they wanted to come over and hang at our house. And they didn't even really hang out with my kids. So we kind of had to like establish a rule with the neighborhood kids. If I had my name badge on, then I was in employee mode and I was someone who worked at the school and they could come to me and talk to me about their problems or whatnot or whatever. But if I didn't have my name tag on and I was at the school, I was in parent mode. And they knew I was there for my kids and I was doing something with my kids and my priority was my kids. And that really helped a lot to kind of help clue the kids in that, now I'm here for everyone. Now I'm here for my kids. Because we would go to school events and they would want my attention and they would want to show me things. And I'm like, I'm here for my kids right now, though. Like, I love you. That's great. That's wonderful. But I'm a parent right now. So that was one of those ways that we kind of worked out that whole transition thing for me with that job. Just wanting to clarify something. I realized earlier I mentioned a CDC, and I realized that in the normal American vernacular, that would be Center for Disease Control, but in the military parlance or whatever, military acronym, that is a Child Development Center. That is childcare. So wasn't meaning CDC as in the, Center for Disease Control. And yeah, there is a whole alphabet soup, and I've kind of talked about that before with the military. But basically, the whole purpose of this episode, and I really hope that it kind of gave you some ideas, is that really mental transitions are important. We need to be able to have that separation emotionally and psychologically from work to home. And recognizing that in our military spouses was something that it took us a while to do, or at least the spouses of this group that we were talking about. And every family was handled that need differently. So know that you're going to need to be flexible. It's something you might want to talk about. It'll help. But having those visual or verbal or time cues so that you know what's going on and you're on the same page and you can just be there for each other as much as possible is really super helpful. So I hope that this gave you some ideas on ways that you can work with those transitions and the boundary overlap between work and your home life in more effective ways. The other thing I want to let you all know is that Maria Strange and I are going to be doing another class coming up in September. There is going to be more information coming out next week in the podcast about it. I'm actually going to do a podcast with Maria to talk about what we're covering and what you can expect and how to sign up and that whole shebang. So I'm really excited. I like teaching these little mini classes for you guys because I feel like it gives me the opportunity to interact directly more with you and answer questions and whatnot. So please share the information. I tune back in next week to get more information, and I hope you share it. And I really just want to be here as a resource. So please put together questions. Come join the class. We're doing this as a free thing because we want to give back to these communities we love. Last time it was geared more towards military spouses. This time it's geared towards anyone. This is topics that affect everyone. So share it broad and wide, and it's free. Yeah. With that said, you are listening to Life of a Military Wife, and I am your host, Sam Wolf.